And right now we are joined with Roger Stone for the Stone Zone. Good evening, Roger. How you doing? Sorry. Good evening, Roger. How you doing?
Great to be here, Jimmy.
Always appreciate your time. Just start off with, the basic question at 30,000 feet. Do you agree with Donald Trump and the launching the missiles into Syria last night?
Well, haven't I already seen this movie? In other words, several months ago, wasn't there an accusation that Assad had used gas on his own people that turns out to be incorrect, false? And isn't it kind of ironic or even coincidental that only days ago Donald Trump said on his Twitter feed that he was preparing to withdraw American troops from Syria? So I have a healthy skepticism about why Assad would do this. It doesn't seem to be in his political or geographic interest. He had to know that it would bring down the international world community on him. So there's something illogical about it. Then the other thing I wonder is whether the strike, kind of like the last one, will be so surgical and so limited that it won't, at the end, be much more than a political statement. All of that said, Jimmy, for those who say Donald Trump's in the tank with the Russians, what about this?
Well, playing along with the conspiracy theory on it, to all the points that you just made, would that be the reason for doing it?
Well, I think the president's doing what he thinks is right.
Yeah.
He's got away a lot of information, and clearly the neocons and the war hawks in his administration are making a heavy case that Assad did this and that the world community expects some action, some leadership from the United States. Perhaps.
And I think that...
I don't think the president would launch strikes for strictly political reasons. I do think it is kind of ironic that this does, however, as an action, disprove this whole notion that he's in the tank for Putin. Kind of like the sale of offensive weapons to Ukraine, which the Republican platform opposed, for which Trump and Paul Manafort and the Republicans were criticized, but now is the policy of the Trump administration to the consternation of the Russians.
It was a busy day for Donald Trump. His day started out with the pardoning of Scooter Libby and then obviously addressing the nation on the Syrian issue at 9 o'clock. Your thoughts on the pardoning of Mr. Libby?
Well, one other important piece of news the same day, and I don't think we should gloss over this, and that is the president announced his intention to work with Senator Cory Gardner of Colorado to ensure the protection of state-legalized cannabis. That's marijuana, where 29 states have approved it for medicinal use. This is a repudiation of Jeff Sessions' position. It is a reassertion of the position Donald Trump took during the campaign, where he pledged to support the access of millions of Americans who use marijuana for medicinal purposes. So, mixed emotions in this day, Jimmy. I have mixed emotions. I think the president has done the right thing. On the question of Scooter Libby, it's almost like a prize for the neocons. I find it surprising and inappropriate, to be honest with you.
Inappropriate for the pardon?
Well, the president's position is that he ran as an anti-interventionist, and he ran against the Clinton-Bush war machine, the neocon control and, I would argue, influence in our foreign policy establishment, in our intelligence agencies, and so on. Scooter Libby and his crimes are part and parcel of that tradition, and now the president is pardoning him. It's incongruous given his previous positions on the actions, let's say, of the Bush administration when it came to war and peace.
Right. I mean, look, a lot of people thought that George Bush was going to pardon Libby.
Interesting that he commuted his sentence, so Libby never did any time, but it took Donald Trump to pardon him. I'm not sure the pardon was necessary. I was glad to see that he was spared jail, but that's a different question.
Well, it is. I mean, I guess the question is, and of course you can't take the politics out of politics, but was the pardon really nothing to do with Scooter Libby, more just Donald Trump communicating on the Mueller investigation?
I just don't think it's a good message while we're going to war in Syria, and there's questions about the veracity surrounding the origins of those strikes. I actually think it hits the wrong chord from that point of view.
Talking to Roger Stone, former Donald Trump top advisor. Roger, back to Syria real quick. Donald Trump also catching a lot of flack this morning for tweeting mission accomplished. Obviously, that is phrase that's synonymous right now with the infamous speech from George Bush aboard the aircraft carrier talking about Iraq, and that mission still not accomplished. But the mission in Syria was was very defined, and the mission took about 45 minutes, and it looks like what that mission was, whether people agree with it or not, was accomplished. The term, using that phrase, you think that just from a rhetoric standpoint, that was a mistake for Donald Trump?
It was probably not the greatest choice of words. I'd read this morning that this military operation was broader and more robust than the previous one, where they made a surgical strike at a Syrian air base that, Jimmy, was up and operational, the next day.
Right. Right.
So until I know more about what was actually achieved here, I think there was a rush to war. And that's not the platform that Donald Trump got elected on. He got elected on as a non-interventionist who would not lead us to any more endless foreign wars where our inherent national interests were not clear. We're going to have to let the dust settle here and see where this all leads. I understand the domestic value of standing up to the Russians. The Russians have shown an extraordinary amount of restraint. I feared some retaliation. There hasn't been any, at least not so far. Again, I'd like to see proof that Assad gassed his own people. When the government says we assess with a high degree of confidence, those are code words for we don't know anything.
Right. Well, not only has there not been any real retaliation from the Russians, just even rhetorically speaking, they've been pretty quiet on this whole thing.
They have seemed to have taken a low-key position. Let's see how this develops.
Roger, looking at ABC News, you're coming out advice to Donald Trump: don't fire Mueller. Obviously, that's been floated out there for a while. He has the constitutional right to do that, and obviously Trump is very frustrated with a lot of the news that's been reported on this, and the fact that a year after the after this witch hunt began, it hasn't gone away. I agree with you. I think that would be a mistake, and I don't see him doing that. I mean, even as unpredictable as Donald Trump is, I don't see that being on the table.
Well, let's be clear. I didn't say that he didn't have the grounds, that he would not be justified in doing so. I think he would. I didn't say that he didn't have the legal authority to do so. I think he does. I'm looking at it strictly from a political point of view. I think it would give the Democrats and their handmaiden allies in the media the upper hand in the argument over Russian collusion. You see, Trump fired Mueller when he was on the cusp of finding the Russian connection.
Right.
I have advocated the termination of Rod Rosenstein at least a month and a half before Steve Bannon figured it out, writing for InfoWars and the Daily Caller. I do believe that McCabe should be prosecuted, and I also believe that Mr. Comey has his own issues. Talk about a tin ear. I think Comey going out on this book tour is going to turn out to be an egregious mistake.
I agree with you.
If he thinks he has some stellar reputation as a Boy Scout, I think he's in for a rude surprise. This guy's record is checkered. He's got a record now, a provable record as a liar, as a leaker.
And now he wrote a book about it. I mean, the book proves just how unclean he was from the beginning.
Exactly right. At least the excerpts of it that I have read.
Right.
And look, I think there are going to be protests of Trump supporters and info warriors and others at all of these, his book signings. Peaceful protests designed to make a point that this is not Jim Comey, this is Lion Comey.
Right. Roger, in a minute or less, you thought that he would be, obviously he's within his right, but would not object to him firing Rosenstein. Do you think that could just be, again, politically viewed as a Trojan horse way of getting rid of Mueller?
Well, I think it ensures that Mueller's ongoing illegal actions cannot continue. Look, even though there is no special counsel law in place governing Mr. Mueller's actions, he has been, as like a bookkeeping thing, getting everything approved by Rosenstein kind of for the file. Rosenstein, for example, was the one who approved the use of the fake dossier for the surveillance of the Trump campaign. Rosenstein approved the warrants to go in to Michael Cohen's office, his hotel room, his home, seeking records Presumably, all of this is done to cross the T's and dot the I's, but it is giving Mueller cover that I don't think he deserves.
Roger, always appreciate your time. For the Stone Zone, we're in contact with your camp. We've been back and forth on dates. We're working through that, so we'll have you back out here to Baltimore for crab cakes real soon. And the fact that we got pushed back a little bit works because the weather is better and, better to do during the summertime.
And frankly, Jimmy, my new book, Stone's Rules, will be in bookstores May 15th, so we probably are best to structure the new book signing around the new book.
And that's what we would do. Roger Stone, always a pleasure, my friend. Thank you very much.
Great to be here, Jimmy.
Appreciate it.